I'm Dr. Nate Storey from Bright Agritech, and this is Aquaponics Academy episode number 5. Today we're going to talk about fish and aquaponics systems, how they work with your plants and your microbes to keep the system healthy and produce food, and what to be thinking about when you're thinking about choosing a fish for your system.
Welcome to Aquaponics Academy, a Bright Agrotech podcast designed to help you overcome common aquaponic issues, learn new growing techniques, and help you be as successful as you can be as an aquaponic practitioner. Join aquaponics expert Dr. Nate Storey, the creator of Zip Grow Towers, as he breaks down complex topics into easy-to-understand information. And now, here's Dr. Nate Storey.
So the first question is, how do fish work in the aquaponic system? So as we all know, aquaponic systems are a little ecosystem, a mini ecosystem composed of fish, plants, and microbes for the most part. There's other components there, but your fish are producing waste. The microbes are taking that waste, they're breaking it down, they're oxidizing those waste products, and they're making things plant available. So all those nutrients that are in that waste become plant available through all of those little microbial processes. So they're really important. They're kind of the translator between the fish and the plants. So the plants then are taking all of these waste nutrients out of the water, so the water can be recycled back to our fish production. So in these systems, fish are really serving as the primary nutrient source. So it's from the fish that we get all of these nutrient resources. All of these things coming into the system, for the most part, are coming from our fish, from their waste and from the products of their respiration. And so in that regard, the fish are really key to any system health. You want fish that are happy, that are healthy, that are not stressed, that are producing lots of waste and keeping all of your plants well supplied with nutrients. But for the grower, the fish is also an important source of revenue or of food. So if you're growing fish, it's probably because you want to eat them at some point, or you want to sell them to someone who wants to eat them. Now, some folks like me, you are kind of softies, and you develop attachments to your fish. So I don't want to discount the fact that some people just want fish because they're beautiful and they enjoy them too. So for some aquaponics growers, the fish are, fish like koi have an aesthetic value or an emotional value to that person, as opposed to value as food or as a source of revenue. So these are all kind of things to keep in mind. What do you want to use your fish for? And so we know what fish are useful for in the system. We know why we put fish in the system. The next question is, what types of fish are commonly used, and what should you be thinking about when you're choosing a fish? And these are really closely linked, because most of the really popular fish in aquaponic systems are popular for a reason. They're tolerant of poor water quality, so they can be abused to some extent, when it comes to lack of filtration, or they'll eat anything, so you can feed them from all sorts of different feed sources, or they tolerate very cold water in certain climates. All of these are kind of traits of certain fish that are used today in a lot of aquaponic systems. So I'm going to dig into this just a little bit, and we're going to talk about the different fish types that are currently being used and why people have chosen them. So if anyone is familiar with aquaponics, you know that tilapia is one of the most popular types of fish to use in these systems. In fact, here at Bright Agritech, we grow almost all tilapia for the most part. At different points in time, we've had other fish species that we've worked with, but tilapia are always kind of our primary fish. And there's a few different types of tilapia, but here in the U.S., almost all of our tilapia has interbred, so they're kind of mutts. So there's very few purebred tilapia left. And the reality is you don't really need purebred tilapia. Now, the only time where having really pure genetics for tilapia is important is when you're crossing certain types to get sterile male offspring. So a lot of the all-male tilapia that are sold as fry, for aquaculture, for aquaponics folks, some of them are treated with like basically a hormone, testosterone or something, to sex reverse them if they're female. But a lot of them too are just natural crosses, and some crosses produce all male fish. So this is one trait in tilapia that can be really useful, because If you have all males, then you don't have breeding. And tilapia are very fecund, is the word for it. They breed readily. They really like to produce a lot of offspring, even in these systems. So this can be a concern, because if they're breeding, they're not necessarily gaining weight, and there's also a lot of breeding behavior that's pretty abusive to the fish. They really beat on each other. So tilapia are really popular, and there's a lot of options out there when it comes to tilapia. We're big Niloticus fans. They're Niloticus, primarily Niloticus, Oreochromis niloticus. That's a Nile tilapia. We really love those fish. We've got a lot of them, and our own kind of internal mutt breed is mostly Niloticus genetics, and we've crossed them with some Oreochromis aureus, which are the fish from the Sea of Galilee. They're more northern tilapia, and they're a little bit more cold tolerant in some ways. So we've kind of got this crazy mixed breed tilapia race that we're running here in Laramie, Wyoming, and they serve us very well. So we really like them. Tilapia are great because they're tolerant of poor water quality. They're tolerant of of pretty high temperatures. They're not very tolerant of low temperatures, so that's a drawback. They'll eat just about anything, and they breed really readily, which can be a problem sometimes, but the rest of the time it's really nice because we can basically breed all the fish we need to keep our system happy and to keep our tanks well stocked. So tilapia are really popular for all of these reasons, and they're a very easy fish to work with. The drawbacks are they don't like cold, so they don't tolerate cold temperatures very well, and they can be illegal in a lot of places because they tend to be invasive. The very things that make them great in aquaponic systems are the very things that make them invasive. So another really popular fish, and one that I'm a big fan of, is catfish. So these are typically channel catfish. These are really commonly stocked in a lot of places, and they're a great fish. They're more of a bottom feeder, so sinking feed, you can feed them with sinking feed. But the nice thing about catfish is they're like tilapia. They'll eat just about anything. So there are people that feed out catfish on dog food. Now, I wouldn't recommend it, but it just kind of goes to show that there are a lot of options there when it comes to feeding catfish. So they're tolerant of much colder water than tilapia are. They gain weight really well. In fact, I know a lot of people who can plump up catfish much faster than they can tilapia. And they're just an all-around tough fish, but they're also a really good fish. And there's a lot of acceptance for them. So a lot of people that might turn their nose up at tilapia, if you offer them a nice big fat juicy catfish fillet, they'll get really excited. So catfish are not as tolerant as tilapia of really poor water quality, but they are more tolerant than a lot of other species out there like trout and yellow perch. So catfish are a great option if you're thinking about a more cold tolerant fish that will do well in warm water as well, and something that's a little bit more tolerant than, say, trout. So trout are kind of another option, and a lot of people want to do trout, and I end up talking a lot of people out of them. And the reason for that is that trout are kind of finicky fish. You have to have a lot of filtration in place. You got to make sure you're giving them good water quality in order to get them to grow. And you've got to keep your temperatures low. So if you're in a really hot place, it becomes really difficult during the summer to keep your water temperatures low enough for them unless you're using like a chiller or something like that. So trout can be really nice, but you got to have real clear water, and you have to keep the temperatures of your water pretty low. But if you can do those things, and especially if you're in a northern environment where your water stays cold all year round, then trout are a great option, and you should definitely be looking at them. Yellow perch are kind of becoming a really popular fish as well. Now, I don't recommend yellow perch just because they're really hard to get a hold of. There aren't a whole lot of hatcheries that are successful with them, and you have to basically train the fry to take pelleted feed because they want live feed. And they're just kind of a finicky fish, but there's a big market for them. They're a lot like trout in a lot of ways. You need to give them pretty high quality water, and they don't tolerate warmer water temperatures, so you got to keep your water temperatures low. But they're nice fish, and they're really delicious if you've ever had them. Bluegill or bream is another fish that a lot of people are using now, and people are having great luck with them. They're a tolerant fish. They're kind of like catfish in a lot of ways as far as their water quality tolerances go, and they're there's a lot of places that really like to eat them, so they're a good option as well if they're legal for you to stock and use in your state. Um, One of the last food fishes I want to talk about is common carp. And this is a fish that I really love. I've grown it in the past. It is an easy fish to grow, very, very easy. And it's actually it is the most popular food fish in the world. But in the States, there's just not a whole lot of acceptance for it. And in a lot of places, of course, it's illegal because it is so invasive. But it's something to be thinking about. If it's legal to culture in your area, you should definitely look into it because they're really great fish. They're basically have all the benefits of all of the other fish that I've talked about so far. So they tolerate higher water temperatures, they tolerate low water temperatures, they'll eat anything. You can, they're very, very tolerant of traumatic events. So, I mean, I've had common carp jump out and land on the ground, and I find them 2 hours later, and they're pretty much dried out. The outside of them is just a solid crust, and and that little eyeball is kind of still twitching a little bit, so I dump them back in the tank, and those suckers, they just rehydrate, and they're fine. I mean, they're just amazing fish. So if you're a beginner and you're looking for a fish that will take a lot of abuse and just keep on kicking, look at common carp, at least to learn on, because they're a great, great fish. And if you cook them up correctly, if you clean them correctly, they're a great food fish too. So those are most of the major food fishes that people are thinking about. The other ones are mostly for aesthetic purposes. These are things like goldfish and koi. And I really love koi and I really love goldfish. I've had pet goldfish for long periods of time in my aquaponic systems. Some of them were my initial starter fish, the fish that I started with years and years and years ago, and I think the last one just died this past winter. But they're just fun, they're just beautiful fish, and they're a lot of fun. They're pretty useless for food, but I have friends who have grown out koi, and koi can actually be pretty darn valuable for stocking in ornamental ponds. So the irony here is that koi are really pretty much common carp. They're super closely related to common carp. Just there's some breeding that's differentiated them from most common carp, but they're legal in a lot of places, and common carp aren't. So koi are a great option for folks that want a good, tolerant fish that can actually have some value, but they're also really, really beautiful. So what should you be thinking about when you're choosing a fish? This is a big question, and there's a lot of variables you have to consider, and I would break them down into 4 basic categories. Okay, so you've got environmental variables, that's category 1. You've got use variables, that's how are you going to use these fish? What do you expect from them? That's number 2. Now, category number 3 is legality. So are the fish legal in your area? Where are you going to find them? Can you find them legally? And then, of course, cost or cost of ownership. Like what are the needs of these fish? And what's it going to cost you to take care of them and grow them to maturity? And what are they going to basically deliver for you? What are the return on investment? This is a fairly financial assessment here. So in those 4 categories, we're just going to go through them and break them down and kind of reason out kind of the things that we're thinking about as we're looking at different fish. So in the environmental category, you have to think about what your water quality is. So if you've run these systems before, depending on your design, if you're concerned, if you think you're going to be running lots of solids and you're just getting your system started and things are still a little dirty and the system hasn't stabilized yet, these are things you have to be thinking about, because if you plop trout in a warmed system with a lot of solids and there's a lot of oxygen depletion, there's not a whole lot of soluble oxygen anyway because it's warm, you're going to have a fish kill. You're going to have problems. So you need to be thinking about what are the environmental variables in my area? What will the ambient temperatures be, around the system? What are the temperatures of the water going to be at different times of year? What is the climate? And for some fish as well, if they rely on photoperiod or light cycles for breeding, you need to kind of know if you've got enough light, if that's an intention of yours too. So think about the environment. What kind of environment is the system going to be in, and is it suited to the fish that I'm interested in? So if I'm in a cold water environment, or if I'm up in Minnesota and I'm doing this in a garage that I'm just going to keep right above 40 for most of the winter, I'm not going to do tilapia because it's going to cost me a fortune to heat those tanks. I'm going to look at something like catfish or trout, maybe carp or something like that. Something that will handle those colder temperatures and still be pretty active in producing nutrients for my plants. Similarly, if I'm in the south and it's really hot and I've got kind of poor water quality, I'm not going to pick trout. I'm going to pick something like tilapia that will take poor quality water and take those warmer temperatures that come with living down in the south. So these are things to think about. What kind of a climate are you working with? So the next category is use. What do you intend to use these fish for? Are you going to sell them for food? Do you care about the flavor of the fish? Do you care about the appearance of the fish? Do you care if the fish are? Do you care if they'll breed basically in your tanks? I mean, do you want fry production? Do you want more young stockers being produced that you can stock other tanks with? I mean, these are all questions of use. So if you're looking for fish that will be fairly sustainable in your system, that you won't have to buy stockers from someone else for, trout probably aren't for you. You don't want to try and set up a mini hatchery. You're thinking more along the lines of tilapia at that point because they'll breed just about anywhere. If you want to sell them for food, if that's your primary goal and you want something with really good flavor, maybe trout or catfish or yellow perch are what you're looking at there. If it's just for your family, you're looking for something that's more water quality tolerant. Maybe you're looking at something like bluegill or catfish or tilapia or a combination of those fish. So be thinking about all these things. What is uniquely suited to your particular use? Because not everyone intends to use fish for the same purposes. So the third category there is legality. And this is a big one, right? And of course, we don't encourage people to be using fish that are illegal in their state. You can't do that. That's illegal, right? You need to talk with your game and fish department. You need to find out what's legal in your area. And oftentimes the benefits of doing this are that they like to work with you and they might be able to tell you who some hatcheries are that have a good reputation in the area, places where you can source a lot of your initial fish stocks. So be talking with your local folks, find out what's legal, and a lot of the time they can help you with legal sourcing. Now, if something's legal and there are other folks that are sourcing fry or something like that, then definitely look into those opportunities too, because sometimes you can get pretty inexpensive fish for cheap. Just make sure what you're doing is legal and make sure that you're getting good disease-free fish stock. Because if you start with disease-ridden stuff right off the bat, you're going to have those diseases in your system for a long time. It takes a long time to get rid of them. So make sure you're legal. The last one is costs. So what are the costs of owning these fish? What are the costs of producing these fish? And what is it going to cost you to grow them out to maturity? So what kind of feed do you need? If you need a really high protein feed, it's going to cost you a lot more than a low protein feed. So fish like catfish and tilapia and carp, they do great on low protein feeds. But if you're growing trout and yellow perch, if you're growing bluegill to some extent, you need a higher protein feed. Now, I will say, as kind of a side note here, we tend to feed high protein feeds to all of our fish, whether we're growing tilapia or trout or whatever, simply because we get better plant production on those higher protein feeds and we see fewer deficiencies. So we already kind of pay a little bit extra to make sure that our plants stay healthy on the waste being produced, but still be thinking about what kind of protein content do I need? And what kind of feed am I going to have to be buying? Because there's a lot of price differences in feed, and different fish will take different protein contents and different types of feed. I will say that I recommend high quality feed. I really do. Don't buy the cheap stuff down at your local feed store. Sometimes they have the good stuff, but a lot of the time, I would recommend something like Spreading. That's where we get most of our feed at. Something that's formulated really well. It's really high quality. And you won't regret spending an extra $10 on a bag of feed. So what are the other kind of costs of ownership? I mean, what's the cost of growing this fish out as opposed to another fish? And this is almost like a return on investment analysis. You got to look at these fish and say, what are they going to be worth? What are they worth to me and my family if we're just going to be eating them? What are they worth if I'm going to be selling them? And how much is it going to be costing to produce them? So some fish just cost a lot more to produce than others. And these are usually kind of the fish that are a little bit more finicky, that need higher quality feed, that need tighter water quality controls or tighter water temperature controls. Because sometimes you'll have to be installing special controls to make sure that your fish stay happy and stress-free. So be thinking about all of these different things. And, I can't afford to go into a lot of detail on all these different fish and all of the different things you need to grow them because, we have to keep these podcasts below 6 hours long. But, these are kind of launching points, starting points for you to go out and do a little research and find out what is really applicable to your situation, what's specific to your situation, and figure out what these are going to cost, what your environmental variables, your use variables are, and whether these fish are legal. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Aquaponics Academy. We hope you're finding these first few podcasts really helpful to understand what aquaponics is about. And we are going to be getting into a lot more detailed information in future episodes, so stay tuned. And we'll continue to talk about fish, and down the road we'll probably do a few episodes just on fish, how they work, what to do, what not to do, and just kind of some of the really simple aspects of raising fish in these systems. So on behalf of everyone here at Bright Agrotech, we hope you'll stay connected with us and subscribe to our podcasts. If you find them useful, definitely subscribe. And we're going to continue to give you guys really high quality tips and techniques moving forward. Thanks for listening.